Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I also don't think I thanked you guys for hitting the 1,000 subscriber mark last time. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but if I did, then I'll just thank you again. Thank you so much. It means more than you know. It's sort of unfathomable to me that 1,000 individuals cared to subscribe to me. I don't know how bigger YouTubers can sort of fathom like hundreds of thousands or millions of people subscribing and watching them. I don't know how I would deal with that, but thank you so much. I make mostly true crime content, so if that's something you're interested in, maybe consider subscribing or like this video. Let's get into it. Earlier this year, I covered the tragic murders of two members of the Stockdale family by a third member, Jacob Stockdale. I covered the case pretty in depth, but at the time, Jacob still hadn't gone to trial for his crimes, so all the answers specifically about his motive had yet to be answered when I made the first video. It is also my most viewed video, so I wanted to provide an update on his case, the sentence, and the trial outcomes. Before I begin, I'm going to give a brief synopsis of the case, though if you want more details, I will link my original video below, and if you've already watched that, this is just a reiteration so you can skip past it. The Stockdale family consisted of 5 members, parents Kathy and Tim Stockdale, and their 4 children, all boys. From youngest to oldest, there were Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. The Stockdale family appeared on an episode of the American reality television show Wife Swap in 2008 opposite the Tonkovich family. The Stockdale family was portrayed on their episode as an uber conservative and religious family from a small town in Ohio. Their defining characteristic in the show, or their main interest that was portrayed in the show, seemed to be their family bluegrass band, where the 4 sons played, as well as their father. The family would regularly travel to play shows and compete in bluegrass competitions starting in 2006, though they had started practicing and playing as a family much earlier. After their episode of Wife Swap aired, the Stockdale family, specifically parents Tim and Kathy, seemed to catch a lot of public slack about how they raised their sons. In Wife Swap episodes, at the beginning of each episode, when the wives are swapped, they sort of read off a document about the family rules, and they're usually the polar opposite of each other. So for the Stockdale family, their rules included religious motivated homeschooling, heavily monitoring their internet intake and their music intake, such as like they wouldn't allow their sons to listen to specifically rap music, no video games, and not allowing the boys to date, which of course they attributed to their fundamental religious beliefs. Though I want to make it clear here, because I'm not sure if I did in the original video, that this is their portrayal on a reality TV show. As most people know, reality TV is often very skewed, and there are narratives that the producers want to put forth about the very real people that are starring in them. So this could very well be nothing like the Stockdale family was in real life, and people that knew them said they weren't as harsh as they were portrayed in Wife Swap. So I say all this to say that I wouldn't rely too heavily on their episode of Wife Swap to really truly understand the family dynamics, though it does give us some insight. Anyways, after appearing on the reality television show, which they said they did so tentatively, they sort of disappeared, or the Stockdale family sort of disappeared back into their normal life, continuing focusing on their family bluegrass band until one by one their sons left for college. So they would move out of their rural family home for post-secondary studies and started their own lives. Some of them, the older ones, obviously have families now. On June 15, 2017, 25-year-old Jacob Stockdale took possession of a shotgun from the family's gun cache and shot his younger brother, who was 21-year-old James, and his mother, 51-year-old Kathy, though other reports say she was 54, I believe, so I'm not really sure how old Kathy was when she passed. Local police then responded to a hang-up 911 call that was placed at 4:36 p.m. by going to the Stockdale family home where the call had originated from. When police arrived, they found the front door to the farmhouse open and a body or a person laying close to the front door. They heard a gunshot as they were going to enter the house, so they called for backup. They then tentatively entered the home and identified 21-year-old James as the body that was close to the door. He was deceased at the time that police came. And then as they were searching the rest of the house, they found Kathy, who was also deceased by a gunshot wound upstairs in a bathroom. The gunshot that police had heard when they were approaching the house was Jacob attempting to complete suicide by shooting himself in the head, but miraculously he was still alive when police found him, and he was immediately rushed to a local hospital and received immediate medical attention. Jacob would go on to survive his gunshot wound, though it appears that he really had to undergo a lot of reconstructive surgery and experience significant memory issues and cognitive delays from the trauma. His recovery, as I said, was very slow. It really happened over a whole year, which affected the police investigation, but Jacob was finally arrested for the murder of his mother and younger brother in September 2018 after turning himself in. Though grieving the loss of his wife and son, Jacob's father Tim stood by his son's side throughout the entire judicial process and continues to stand by him to this day, which is a pretty significant act of love, in my opinion, for a father to do. Jacob's attorneys, I believe there's two of them, originally planned to proceed with a plea or a defense of not guilty by reason of insanity, so a lengthy process of psychological evaluations and treatment began after his arraignment.
Having had a chance to review the previous report issued by Psychodiagnostic, I am also going to be filing the not guilty by reason of insanity plea and ask the court to order the appropriate evaluations for that plea also.
This delayed the process of a trial even more. In May 2019, Jacob was sent to a secure psychiatric facility after a judge deemed this was necessary. The psychiatric facility was Heartland Behavioral Healthcare Hospital. This decision was made after he was found incompetent to stand at trial after his second mental health evaluation. The first one he underwent found that he was competent to stand trial, but his defense attorney requested a second opinion, which they got, and it said that he was incompetent. Dr. Karpowicz, who was the psychiatric doctor who conducted Jacob's second psychiatric evaluation or psychological evaluation, stated that they believed that competency could be restored if Jacob underwent approximately a year of intensive psychological treatment that would work to address his cognitive issues and depression. So Jacob's trial was again put on hold for basically another year or two while he underwent mental health treatment. During his time in the psychiatric hospital, Jacob actually reportedly tried to escape twice, once in November 2019 through the library. So essentially he just waited in the library until after hours and tried to escape that way somehow, but staff caught him and immediately sent him back, so he didn't get too far with this one. And then the second one occurred around a month later in December 2019 when he tried to escape by blending into a crowd that was leaving the hospital. He was, of course, unsuccessful both times and was caught pretty fairly quickly, though he wasn't charged with attempted escape. Then Jacob's trial faced even more delays when the 2020 pandemic hit, which of course affected the speediness of his trial. When I covered the case in January 2021, Jacob's trial was still being delayed because of the pandemic, as well as Jacob's hesitancy to participate in competency evaluations on more than one occasion. He refused to undergo these evaluations, and he actually had to be brought in front of the court via Zoom call for the judge to really state the seriousness and that he needed to participate or he would be held in contempt. So we have finally arrived at the update section of the video, though unfortunately there is still a lot of information that is missing and I don't know if we'll ever know it. But let's get into what we know now. In early February 2021, Jacob Stockdale appeared in court via Zoom call for his Sanity hearing. It was stated that Dr. Woods, who had conducted multiple medical evaluations or psychological assessments on Jacob, found that Jacob was not suffering from a severe mental illness that would prevent him from undergoing a trial, so he was now deemed competent to stand trial. She also found that he was not suffering from a, quote, extreme mental defect when he committed the murders of his mother and brother in 2017, which this was, as I mentioned before, his defense lawyer's main case or defense for him was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity, so Dr. Wood kind of quashed that.
Jacob, can you hear us here today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In this particular case, there's been a report that has been filed in this case, and just to walk through it by Dr. Archangela Woods, it's her opinion based on a reasonable psychological certainty that you are not suffering from a severe mental defect at this time of the charge, and she lists her reasons. She indicates it's her opinion beyond a reasonable psychological certainty that Mr. Stockdale was not suffering from a severe mental disease at the time charged. She's indicating that Mr. Stockdale, in her opinion, based on a reasonable psychological certainty, he was not suffering from a severe mental illness or disease or defect at the time of the offense charged. And an opinion regarding wrongfulness cannot be rendered because his defense is that he's asserting his innocence. So we have this report, we've done the competency, we've done several competency evaluations, we've now done the sanity evaluation. We have a trial scheduled for May 4th.
Based on these findings, the judge ruled that Jacob would be tried for committing the double murder and scheduled his trial for May 4th, 2021. In another hearing in February 2021, a little bit later in February, surrounding where Jacob was going to be held, if either he was going to stay in the psychiatric hospital or if he was going to be sent back to the county jail. Jacob attended this, of course, via Zoom call again because of the pandemic. Mental health professionals at the secure psychiatric facility that Jacob had been staying at since 2019 believed that Jacob was well enough to be placed back in county jail while awaiting his upcoming trial in May. During this hearing, the judge outlined multiple concerns about Jacob's behavior during the time he was in the psychiatric facility, specifically outlining an incident where after receiving a haircut from someone that worked in the hospital, he told the barber that he now resembled his cousin and, quote, if he were able to get keys to the facility, he could walk out. So this is sort of outlining Jacob's motivations multiple times, three incidences at least, where Jacob had expressed intent to escape the psychiatric facility, so they wanted to put him in a more secure place like a jail. Jacob's defense, in contrast, outlined his improvements made from his mental health treatment that he had received in the hospital, citing his participation in group therapy and mock trials, and that he takes his medication as directed, though it is with supervision. His defense lawyers sort of tried to use these instances of Jacob sort of obeying their rules and activities of the hospital to make a case for Jacob to remain in the psychiatric facility, stating that he would do better mentally and would continue to thrive if he stayed there. But ultimately, the judge ordered Jacob to return to Stark County Jail, while awaiting his trial, with his defense lawyers backed up into a wall as they were no longer allowed to use the defense of not guilty by reason of insanity. They decided to proceed with a guilty plea instead in hopes of getting leniency in Jacob's sentence. In late April, around a week before Jacob's trial was set to start, he appeared before Judge Frank Forcioni, who had basically presided over Jacob's entire court case and all his hearings. He appeared before him in Stark County Courthouse and pled guilty to 2 counts of murder. I believe there was originally an additional gun charge that Jacob was facing as well, but in the plea deal, this charge was dropped, so he was only charged with the 2 counts of murder for his brother and his mother's death. During his sentencing hearing, Jacob's family refused to speak, but asked the judge to be lenient when considering his sentence. The judge deliberated for a while, and then Jacob Stockdale was sentenced to 15 years for each murder to be served consecutively. So in total, his sentence is 30 years in prison for the murder of his mother and younger brother. I couldn't find anywhere when he would be eligible for parole, if he's eligible at all. In my experience, it's usually around either halfway or 2/3 through the sentence that someone is eligible for parole, but I'm not a professional, I do not know. Unfortunately, the main question that a lot of the public wanted answered, which was Jacob's motive for killing his brother and sister, was never answered, and we are no closer to really understanding why Jacob did what he did than we were a year ago, which is unfortunate because it sort of causes quite a wild speculation online, and maybe unwarranted allegations about the parents are thrown about. All the public has is one episode of Wife Swap where there was probably a narrative spun by the producers, so we don't know too much about this family, though I have heard people who've known the family say that they were very loving and caring to their children, so there's a lot of allegations of abuse or like oppression from the parents. And I can't say that these are founded because there is no evidence. There were no prior police calls made to the Stockdale farmhouse, no sort of CAS involvement that anyone could dig up or find. So there's no real legitimacy to this. So I'd be hesitant in believing that, though it is possible because we don't know. I'm sorry I couldn't give you guys more concrete answers. I myself sort of wanted them to sort of put this mystery to bed of the Stockdale family murders. But maybe one day Jacob or one of his family members will decide to speak publicly on the tragedy, as so far the Stockdale family only released one public statement right after the murders happened, and they haven't really said anything publicly since then. But also I would never put that on them to speak publicly about it because it is a tragedy, but maybe one day we'll know, or maybe one day we won't. But in the meantime, I send all my love to Timothy and the remaining Stockdale family members as they continue to grieve the loss of 3 of their closest loved ones. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you believe about this case or what you think, but please remain respectful when speaking about the family. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.